Thank you for traveling, some of you quite a distance to come here for our Convention of States project. My name is Brent Dove. I live in Ray Valley, Arkansas. Most of you are going to go, where is that? A very small community in north central Arkansas. Yes, I know where it is. I am the state director for the Convention of States project. And I joined relatively recently, and I've watched how this movement is growing. I was speaking with several legislators yesterday, and I was very surprised. They said, you know, I get more email about this than any other topic. And I thought, wow, maybe things are moving along for we the people. And in fact, many people are beginning to take a very active part in their government. And so I know that's why you're here. I'd like to introduce my colleague and friend, Ken Clark. He's our regional director. As you know, this is truly a national movement. While we have 8 states that have passed already this resolution, the activity is going on in all 50 states. And we're growing stronger almost every day. Literally hundreds of people are joining this movement every day. And so at least for me, yes?
Can you use the mic?
Am I talking too softly?
A little bit.
Thank you.
How about now?
Thank you.
Yes. I like that. You sound a lot more authoritative, didn't you? This movement is really taking hold, especially here in Arkansas. I'm very gratified to see so many people. I talk to people every day about being involved and making a difference and wanting to take back our government at all levels, not just the federal level, but at the state level as well. And it's encouraging to see that some of our legislators are actually getting feedback from so many people. And it's people like the ones that are here in this audience that will make a difference. Someone once said that a small group of people, depending on God, can change this nation. And I've seen it. In just the 2 months that I've been involved in this activity as the state director, I was the district captain before, but I've actually seen it, and I have much more confidence that we can, in fact, take this country back. But we have to be very diligent, and I'm grateful that you're here. I'd like to, first of all, ask Ken to come up and just give you a quick overview of where we are. He's at the regional director, so he sees, actually most of the states that have passed already are under his group. I'd like to talk, just take a few minutes and talk about Convention States and how it's moving with the national level and a bit more about it.
Are there any patriots in the house?
Yeah.
I don't think I need a microphone. Anybody believe I need a microphone? You good back there? My name is Ken Clark. I'm the regional director for Convention of States project. I run the southeast section of the United States, including Arkansas. So first and foremost, before I get into anything, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us here today, because without you, we would not be able to save our beloved republic. So give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you. So first and foremost, I want to talk briefly. I know some of you are new to what we're doing. Some of you are veterans. But I want to talk real briefly about, first and foremost, what is Article 5? What are we doing? Did we choose Article 5, or did Article 5 choose us? Article 5 is part of the Constitution. It's in the original text of the Constitution. It was given to us by our founders because our founders knew, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that we would ultimately be facing a situation exactly like the one we are in now. And that's an out-of-control federal government. Right? Now, anybody here believe those pigs are going to regulate themselves? No, they're not. They knew it then. Our founders knew it. So they gave us this gift called Article 5. It is the only tool state legislators have to fight back against the federal government. It is the only one that is constitutional. So what is it? Basically, it states that there are 2 ways to propose amendments to the Constitution. Congress can get together and they can propose amendments to the Constitution. So go back to my original question, anybody believe those pigs are going to regulate themselves? No, they're not. So the second way is the states can get together in the form of a convention to propose amendments to the Constitution. And that is what we are talking about. So it takes 34 states to file an identical resolution to get to convention. At convention, they will deliberate just like any other deliberative body and come up with proposed amendments. Once that's done and we get a majority of the states to agree at convention that a proposed amendment is worthy, they then send it to the states, and 38 states have to agree and vote to ratify that amendment. Okay? It is a very, very difficult process, and it should be. It should be, because amending the Constitution is a very serious thing. It should not be undertaken lightly. It should be hard, it should be well thought out, and it should be difficult to do, but it should not be impossible to do, and it's not, and that's why we're here. So Convention of States, what are we, what is our mission? And again, Article 5 tells us we did not choose it. The Convention of States Project is a grassroots organization. Millions of people just like you across the country want the United States of America to get back to some sanity. How about some fiscal sanity? I mean, are you kidding? We're pushing $20 trillion in debt. I can't even imagine a number that big. All right? Overregulation. We know what the issues are. We know what the issues are. So we are a grassroots organization that has come together to be, and we are focused on an issue, but first and foremost, we are a grassroots organization. We want to be able to and have the numbers and the power to influence our legislators both at the local level and the national level. So that's number one. Number two, we are here to pass the Convention of States resolution, the Article 5 resolution, because I go back to what I had stated earlier. This is the only remedy the states have to fight back against a tyrannical government. And right now we have a tyrannical government. So Article 5 is the solution that is truly as big as the problem. So that is what Convention of States is all about. And our mission is again twofold: to build a grassroots army to pass the resolution that will ultimately save our republic. That's what we're here to do. We are trying to do something that has never before been done. We're trying to save a republic. Every republic in the history of the world has always taxed and spent itself to death. And we're trying to prevent that from happening to ours. And that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. Now, that's a brief overview of who we are and what we're doing. Right now, what I have the tremendous honor and privilege of doing is introducing our keynote speaker. But after that, I want to open it up. I wanted to open up to you and to your questions. We have our entire state team here. We've got Brent Dove, who's our state director. We've got Lynn Wiggins, who is our SIA. We've got our legislative liaison, Randy Alexander. I don't know where he went. Oh, there he is. There's Randy. And we've got we've got some district captains in the room. We've got some volunteers in the room. So I am here to answer your questions. Brent is here to answer your questions. So is Senator Coburn. But without further ado, I know some of you have to leave at 2, so I'm going to keep my remarks short. It is a tremendous honor. A true champion for liberty. A true champion for the Convention of States. The man himself, Dr. No himself, Senator Tom Coburn.
The way you say the Republicans go back to the roots is what made it great in the first place. And that's limited government.
I can't hear you.
You can't? All right, I'll get a little closer to this. It's limited government, a restoration of virtue in our country, the enhancement of personal responsibility, and finally, the rule of law. And if you don't have those 4 things, you won't have a republic for very long. So I'm involved with this process because I actually spent 16 years in Washington pushing boulders up ice floes. And we were somewhat successful. We got the transparency law passed, which is now being used all across the country to hold and criticize a lot of the stupid and wasteful spending that's there. We eliminated the earmark process. but it doesn't come close to the problems that face our country. And as you see your neighbors, and you talk with those that you care about and love, and go to church with or work with, there's this unsettledness in America. Because in our gut, we know things aren't right. It's different. And if you're as old as I am, and many here are, and many are younger, you yearn for a time when our freedom really meant freedom. You know, this year they'll approach 100,000 pages of new federal regulations. The average small business in America, under 300 employees, per employee, according to the Small Business Administration as well as the NFIB, spends $18,000 per employee just complying with federal regulation, and that was before the Affordable Care Act. So, you know, what is freedom? Freedom is based on natural law. It's based on the idea that you get to choose for yourself, within your freedom that doesn't infringe on somebody else, the decisions that are going to affect your life. And what we have today is something very much different than that. The thing I've discovered traveling around the country, pushing this idea of utilizing Article 5 to restore what our founders intended for us to have, is that most people are unaware to the depths of what we've lost. And we're kind of like that proverbial frog that got in a pot of water and pretty soon he was cooked. The other thing that's going on in our country with the loss of the rule of law in many instances, or at least the lack of confidence in the rule of law in many instances, is the respect for the law is declining. And so people say, well, if they don't have to follow the law, I don't have to follow the law. So the unwinding in history of republics occurs over the same thing. Let me give you just a few statistics. Just this last month, the OMB issued notes saying that the deficit was $524 billion. Right? 524. But the debt went up $1.4 trillion. And the unfunded liabilities now total $144 trillion over the next 75 years. That's what our kids will have to be responsible for paying back. And that's growing at $4 to $5 trillion a year. It's an impossible situation. So what does it mean? We're already experiencing that. Median family income was just released this past week. Median family income in this country now is $4,000 less than it was in real dollars in 1988. That means 50% of the people earn more than it, 50% of the people earn less. Now, average family income's grown, but that's because of the disparity, both the increase in the number of people at the poverty level, but also the disparity of what's happened on the upper income, those that are well connected. So that spells a disaster for our country in the future. So we have to go back to opportunity, we have to go back to personal responsibility, we have to go back to enhanced virtue, we have to go back to the rule of law. And if we do that, then we'll see this wonderful country restored. But the only way we'll do that is not by sending new people to Washington. And I'll just give you an example. Go look at how many members of Congress or the Senate said they embraced term limits, and then how many actually are. 3 of us in the last 30 years. 3 out of the 50. So what happens is Washington changes people. And we have to be about freedom and liberty. And also responsibility. What we're saying doesn't mean you eliminate government. We understand there's a significant role for government in our lives in terms of bringing order, bringing law. But it's also, there's a significant role for freedom and economic advancement and wealth creation. And anything we do that enhances those things enhances the future and lessens this burden that's on our children. Just remember, our unfunded liabilities now exceed the entire assets of the whole United States. Our debt to GDP ratio is 150%. There's a book written by an economist from Harvard and one from the University of Maryland called This Time It's Different, which is not. But they made the point that when you get gross debt over 150%, no country gets out of that. Well, we're there. And we're just where Greece was 16 years ago. So how do we fix that? We fix that by average Americans getting involved, using the foundational principles that our founders gave us to return the power to the states. Last point I'll make before we take questions. 60% of the average state budget of state money, not federal grants coming, of state money, is under the control of federal bureaucrats who have never elected anything. That means your legislature only really gets to decide 40% of the money that you pay in taxes in the state of Arkansas. The rest of it is decided by somebody in Washington who doesn't have your best interest, but has the bureaucracy's best interest in mind. Doesn't mean they're bad people, but bureaucracies fail all the time to make the best decision because they tend to make the safest decision for the bureaucracy. Every problem in front of our country is fixable, inherently fixable. We just have to raise the flag and say, here's how you do it. And the way you do it is through a convention of states amendments to the Constitution of the United States to restore the balance between the three branches, which is now totally out of whack, and restore the balance between the states and the federal government. It's achievable. And we're going to achieve it. And let me tell you why. Because our country's getting sicker every day. And we know that. We see that. We feel it. The economic numbers tell us that. You look at the new jobs that have been created. You know, they're poor jobs. They're terrible jobs that have been created. The vast majority. They're at $35,000 a year. You know, $25,000 below median family income. So we're not creating great jobs. We're not really growing. But what is growing is the federal government's growing every day. And it's out of control. And it's time to fix it. Thank you all.
So this is, when Brent and I were talking about setting this up, Brent, why don't you come on up? Sure. And we wanted to have as many volunteers as we possibly could from the state of Arkansas join us. And we were very much appreciative of Senator Tom Coburn for coming down. Let's give him another round.
You know, I'm selfish. I admit that. I'm human. I've got 8 grandkids. What a terrible legacy to leave my grandkids if I don't work every day to try to fix what's coming for them. That's what it's about.
So anyway, we had wanted to open this up for you because I know that a lot of you have a lot of questions and answers, and I didn't want to stand up here and just lecture. I know Brent didn't either. And so that's what we're here for. Brent, am I right on the money there? Or?
Absolutely. So let's start taking some questions. You're thinking about that gentleman was first back here.
You said that the Convention of the States has never been done before. It hadn't been tried either, has it?
Yeah, it actually has. It actually has. It's tried and failed twice. There are still over 450 pending applications sitting in Congress, but there's never been a time in which those aggregate to a point where they qualify for the 34 states. So people have had this idea, balanced budget amendment. You know, the problem with what's going on with that right now is it won't aggregate, so we won't get to 34 with the way it's been passed. What we're doing will aggregate, which means it'll qualify under the Constitution for being a like-minded application. So it has been tried. And the other thing is history. Actually, if you want to hear the history on the Bill of Rights, right after the Constitution was approved, the states started getting together because they're going to use Article 5 to force the Congress to pass the Bill of Rights. They didn't even have to meet. Congress saw what was happening.
That's right.
And Congress passed the Bill of Rights. Well, that's what will happen with this. When we get to 28, I want to tell you, Washington's going to start changing. And when we get to 30, they're gonna start changing rules and regulations. And when we get to 34, they'll pass this stuff out faster than any convention state's ever thought about passing. Because the number one thing they like is keeping their job. Just look at the number of 80-year-olds running for re-election. So it has been tried. It hasn't been effective yet. Our founders, I'm sure, would be amazed that we've waited this long to use this part of the Constitution, because it was the routine practice in all the states. Matter of fact, one convention has happened, and that was the Colorado River Compact, which was done under the same process, under the Constitution, where all the western states that had Colorado water used this as a way to form an agreement that then was blessed by the Congress. So it has been tried, but it's never been tried. And we've never been this sick. Never. And we've never had this kind of problem. Think about what's going on right now. We have, economically, we're in trouble. Morally, and just in virtue, no judgment, but just, the standards of what our country operates on today, even when I don't care whether you read the most religious or conservative or liberal and non-religious argument, what you see is a devaluation of ethics. All right? We no longer honor life, whether that means an unborn child or helping somebody asleep on the street. It's no longer something that is part of our nexus because it's expedient. So we're moving in a direction that's not compatible with survival as a free society. And the danger is we'll get further and further divided, and then you'll see anarchic kind of activities occur, which will be terrible for our country. So part of this movement is to take this theme off, to give people a way to say, hey, wait a minute, things aren't right, let's fix it. It's not about blowing up the country, it's about fixing our country and restoring the things that can make us great again. I don't mean to use that term because I'm not fixing it.
It just comes out.
Anyhow, that's my story and I'm sticking to it.
Did that answer? All right. You have a question?
Yes, I'm wondering what are the prospects for passage of a resolution in the 42 states that have not yet done it in this coming year? And specifically, what about Arkansas?
Well, first of all, there's activity in all 50 states. This county they have already passed, but there's activity in all states. In fact, we have now representatives in every legislative district in the entire United States, and that has never occurred in the history of this union. So that gives you an idea about the level of activity that's growing. Over about 1.8 million people have already registered. What you're doing is having an effect. So that is moving at all state levels. As far as Arkansas, we will win this January with your help. There's a lot of people that are involved, but at the state level, we're extremely active at helping to get this going forward. We already have 2 sponsors that will be sponsoring the bill, Bob Ballinger in the House of Representatives and Gary Stubblefield in the Senate. So that's already established and we'll sponsor the bill in January. Right now, we're building a whole list of co-sponsors. It is our goal to have enough co-sponsors that we pass before we even go to the floor. Do you understand what I mean? Another people that are co-sponsoring the bill. When we go to the floor, we're going to take a vote, but the vote will be over. Does that make sense? And it's going to be required, all of you, your friends, your neighbors, everyone to do this. It cannot be done by the people that are assembled here on this floor. We're not going to make this happen. You're going to make this happen. The people of Arkansas are going to make this happen. But yes, we will pass in January. We're much stronger in 2015. This organization barely got started. And they went ahead and we passed on the floor last time. Caught in the Senate. But that shows you, and people are much more aware. You talk to all the legislators, they're not asking, well, what's this Convention of States thing? What's this Article 5? They're very aware of what's going on, thanks to you and people letting the people. In fact, as I said, the other guy said, where are all these people calling about this Article 5? There's a lot of you. Did that address your question? Hopefully we will pass.
Hey, nationally, if we get 8 or 10 this year, I'll be very, very pleased. Remember, we're just 2 years into this. So if we get, I think comfortably we're going to get 8 more this year, maybe 10, maybe even 12. If we're sitting at 16 to 20 at the beginning of next year, we'll get 4 or 5 that next year, because the legislatures are much like Arkansas. They cycle on to do budget and appropriations and then cycle for legislation. So, but the point is, once we pass 25, the pressure will be on. Plus, we get to concentrate resources then. You know, we're playing in 50 states. We're playing hard in 42 right now. But when we only have to play in 25 with the same amount of resources, we can actually have a much greater impact.
Is there a time limit on garnering this required number of states?
No, ma'am, there's no time limit, but some states will put a time limit on their application. Oklahoma put 10 years on theirs. So if this hadn't happened in 10 years, this was automatically withdrawn. I'm not worried about that. Oklahoma will come back and put it in. There is a time limit, however, by Supreme Court precedent of 7 years to approve any amendment that might come out of a state-based amendments convention.
But that's a Supreme Court precedent, it's not according to the Constitution.
No, the Constitution shows no limit on it.
Way back in the back, he's had his hand up for a while.
Thank you. What does volunteering look like, and how bipartisan is this movement across the United States?
This is the most bipartisan thing I've ever seen. Every time people say, well, you Republican, you Democrat, you Libertarian, I said, I'm American, and this is about fixing central government. This is not... We put up too many barriers for our citizens to talk to each other, respect each other's viewpoints. That was the whole purpose. Many people said, well, why did they close all the curtains in Philadelphia? It was so that they could change their minds, so that they could talk to each other and respect each other. We've lost that in America. We need to get back to that. I respect everybody's opinion, where they come from, different from mine or not. This is definitely not a partisan issue. It really is about taking our country back from a system, both Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, that's gone crazy in Washington, D.C. I think he's basically pointed that out. So I hope that addresses you.
As far as volunteering, though, what can we do besides, I think you alluded to us talking to our friends and neighbors about it, but what else do we need to do in the meantime?
Well, to be honest with you, this is the point where we take our government back. You need to become active in communicating with your representatives. You are their boss. It's really that simple in our government. You are their boss. They're not to be free thinkers and do whatever they just feel like. They represent a population, a number of people. And it's our job as citizens to quit complaining and sitting down and start taking action. It's very simple. It's a phone, it's a computer, and it's just speaking to other people. Really, that's it. It's not very complicated. We don't have to fill forms or suggest different ways and documents. Just communicating with your representative. That's what
And your neighbors. You know, I don't know what your experience is. Mine may be tainted because of my past history. But when I ask people what they think about what's going on in our country today, and I've been in 35 states in the last 2 years, there's a real genuine concern. It doesn't matter what the political affiliation is. And so, you know, the way to start out talking about that, well, there is a solution to fixing our worry. Our founders thought about it. And here's the solution. It doesn't mean everybody's going to agree on what goes into that and what comes out. And the states will have the ultimate decision on it. You know, it takes 38 states to approve anything that would come out of an amendments convention. But the real thing is there's a real unsettledness in our country. And it doesn't matter what your race is, it doesn't matter what your wealth is, or what your political affiliation is. People know things aren't right. And you can feel, it's terrible. You can actually touch it and say, yeah, you're right. And so the answer is, let's fix it. Let's all of us fix it. No matter where we're from, who we're with, what our status is, or what our color, let's all fix it. Because we are the best experiment in government that there ever was, and we need to reestablish it.
Well, I wanted to address your question very specifically, because as far as Convention of States is concerned, there are ways to volunteer. What does volunteering look like? It can be anything from sending out emails if you like doing that kind of thing, making phone calls to recruits, people that have signed a petition, asking them if they have the bandwidth at the time available to get involved in somehow. We have social media. We need help on social media. What we really need most is district captains, especially in Arkansas. We've got, how many districts in Arkansas?
We have 100.
We have 100 districts, and we use the lower house number in order to gauge our success, because we want to make sure that every House district is covered, and that, by default, covers every Senate district. So we need 100 district captains in Arkansas, and they need to have a relationship with their representative, because we've got 100 representatives. They also need to have a relationship with their senator. And all they need to know is who they are, and they need to try to get to know them. Then they need to recruit constituents in that district who are like-minded and want to support us. Now, what do I mean by like-minded? By like-minded, I mean people that will answer this question, who decides, by saying, we in the state of Arkansas should be deciding our future, not somebody in Washington, D.C. And that's where the bipartisan issue comes in, because Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, Green Party, doesn't matter. They all want local control. This is the ultimate in local control, states' rights. I love the 10th Amendment. It's great. Everybody loves the 10th Amendment. But somebody show me an action verb in the 10th Amendment. There isn't one. Article 5 are the teeth of the 10th Amendment, which were already obviously there first. So as far as what does volunteering looks like, that's what it is. It's social media, it's phone calls, it's emails, it's district captain, it's going to events and talking to people, it's giving presentations, it's whatever you have the ability to do, we've got a home for you. I'm telling you, we do. We have got the most advanced technology of any grassroots organization in the country. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. It's got its glitches, sure, but it works. And so we have the ability to support you in your volunteer efforts any way we can.
Is that correct?
Yes, you can volunteer online. You can sign up online. Step one, sign the petition, yes.
Okay, let's move on to some other questions. Yes, ma'am.
His question about how do we volunteer at what? I've been working with Randy on, we get a district, and you wouldn't believe the difficulty we have in getting people to call their senator and their representative. They don't have the time. We need the help. If everybody here took one district and got that district done and had them to call, now, I've gotten really good results with the senators and the representatives when I talk with them. They're in favor of it. But we need a bunch of them, and 3 or 4 of us alone cannot do it.
You're right. You're right. Now this, any type of grassroots movement really works in a very simple way, and that is one tells 4, those 4 tell 4, and it grows. And we do have to expand the number of people, because you're right, we might have 100 people, but we only have 3 within that 100 that really have time, etc. I've been blessed, I'm retired, I have time to commit to this effort. Most people are working hard, working really hard to try to make ends meet in our state, and trying to advocate more time for them is very difficult. So we just need to keep growing the numbers, and we will start getting more people to commit and encourage them to take the next step.
After I did it a little while, I got to where when I could talk with a person that I felt like they might be interested, I'd simply ask them, are you willing to take one of these and do it? And I've gotten a few to do that, but some that promised that they would, I can't get in touch with them. It's a job. It's a job.
If this was easy, we would have done it a long time ago.
Yes.
Please do not get disheartened by this. It's going to be an uphill struggle. There'll come a time when it's not going to be like that. You're going to see things change dramatically in about a month. The election will be behind us. It is what it is. But people will still realize that the problem, as you said, is still here. That election did nothing to change the problems that Senator Coburn is talking about. Not one thing. And that's when we're going to start seeing a lot more growth, and that's why we need your help as we go forward after the election.
Several states that are very liberal and like big government. How do we get those people? I mean, if you take a look at the rural population in this country, we're all conservative, we're all respectful of one another, we all want to work hard, help our families out. But you get to the vast population, cities, type population, and then immediately turn very little.
Mhm.
How do we get those people to understand that this is about their future also?
Well, we may not get to all those things. You know, there's no question that there'll be a tough road in Vermont and Massachusetts and Illinois and California and Washington and Oregon. But as things unwind, get worse. You know, it goes back to the first thing I talked. What do you see concentrated in large urban centers? You see concentration of a large number of elites and very wealthy, and a large number of dependents. You know, here's a factoid. If you don't want to do anything in America today, and you're not 65, you can get $42,000 a year in government benefit. Well, that's more than the average person makes in Oklahoma. So when you undermine personal responsibility to that degree, you know, and that's what Tocqueville said. That's what Alexander Tyler said. The death of a republic comes when you've changed the modus of personal responsibility to where the elites say, "I'll take care of it." That's the same way communism takes over a country. You have a dictator who comes out and says, "I'll get all these things for you." Look what happened in Venezuela. One of the largest sources of oil in the world, and they're bellied up broke because they said they'd do everything for everybody, so they elected them. They became dictators, and what's happened now? So we're not going to get Massachusetts. Now, we may work hard there if we're down to 4 or 5 states. We may work in some of these states that are going to be difficult. We're working in them now. But the whole point is to create the environment where people understand what the real problem is. They all feel it. They all feel it. It doesn't matter what your political philosophy is. But this idea of being personally responsible has one of the reasons we're in trouble. If you look at the Great Society and what happened, the amount of people in poverty today are greater than what we started the Great Society program. Both in terms of absolute numbers, but also in terms of percentage. So what did it do after we spent $20 trillion? We ran the black fathers out of their families. At one point in time, before the Great Society programs, the percentage of absent fathers in white families was greater than the percentage of absent fathers in black families. So how was our policy working for those kids and those families? So it's not about being mad at anybody or saying, you know, we've taken this way. We did stupid things if we want our Republican freedom to grow, and we also want to elevate them in terms of their personal wealth. Learned dependence is tyranny.
It is.
Learned dependence is tyranny. It takes away your freedom.
And how do you change their opinion on themselves?
Well, you know, it takes time. And so what we're saying is this isn't easy. Very high bar, our founders said. But remember, we can't treat symptoms. The real problems are the federal government's out of control. We need to take it back.
The other thing I want you to remember, that we only need 34 states. Here, as Senator said, we're not going to get Massachusetts, or Illinois, others. We only need to get to 34. And then the conversation begins. And that's what the convention is all about, is a conversation of how do we solve these problems. And that's really our goal.
How many do we have?
We have 8 right now, but getting back to what Brent was saying, what that looks like is we need 4 purple states. If we can get 4 purple states, we're at 34. Now, I've got a path to victory in Colorado, which is a purple state. It's a long shot. At best, it's a long shot. But
Right now.
Yeah, right now. Agreed. Thank you, Senator. But right now, it's a long shot. But I've still got a path to victory in Colorado. Okay, that's a purple state, as purple as they come. I mean, it switches parties with a changing season. It really does. But we're going to get there.
Yes, you had a question.
Yes. You know, you're talking about volunteers, you're talking about taking down the government, or not taking down, but taking back control. Specifically, if you go into a convention, are you going to have a list, this? This is what we want in the amendment. Or will the convention develop the list at that point in time? I'm confused about that.
Let me try to answer that for you. First of all, if there is a convention, I think there will be, the jurisprudence on applications require that you have to be specific about what you're asking for.
Before you go in.
Before the states pass it. All right, so we have three areas that amendments could come from. One has to do with length of term, both members and appointed federal officials. All right? Then one is about scope and jurisdiction of the federal government. And the third is about financial control of the federal government in terms of what we're really talking about there is a balanced budget amendment using GAAP accounting. Using the same type of accounting everybody else in this country does except the federal government.
So when a state legislature is looking at this is what they look at.
That's right. It's very specific.
And it's not going to change.
No, it's been written the same in every state.
Okay.
So it won't pass what's called aggregation if it doesn't. All right, if they don't say the same thing. So you're really getting the question is how do you control this? All right, don't take my word for it. Just think realistically. You think anything stupid that might come out of this, there aren't 12 states in this country that are going to say, that ain't happening. Because it requires 38 states to pass it. And I can tell you that the judiciary chairman we have today, around in 34 states, all it takes is either the House or the Senate judiciary chairman to say, we're not hearing that. And that amendment's never considered. So there is no, the risk is not doing something now. There's not a risk of doing something. The risk is to not do something as far as our kids are concerned.
Absolutely. All right, let's keep going.
Yes, you're talking to people, what are the oppositions?
You want to do that?
Yeah, something has to do, yeah.
One, are the country in trouble? Some people say, no, it's not. What are you talking about? I'm clueless, you know. So that's the first. The second is do you really think we need to do this? And then you ask, well, what do you think? What's happening? What do you see? What's happening to your kids, your grandkids? What's happened to the jobs in your area? What happened to manufacturing jobs? You know, what are the things that are happening? How many decisions do the state agencies in Arkansas get to make that are in the best interest of Arkansas, but yet are complying with what the federal government says? So there's all sorts of answers that you get, but the realistic one is things are changing and it's not in the right direction. And most people, when they hear that, they start thinking about it. And you can ask some simple questions.
Well, the government uses their own tax money against us.
Yeah.
They want it, how do we control it?
The only way you control it is through an Article 5 convention. It's the only way you do it. Look, Coburn's rule of bureaucracy, we've got wonderful people that work in the federal government. But the tendency is to never do what's best when you can do what's safe. And so what happens across our country every day is the best decisions of our country aren't made. The ones that are safe so that the bureaucracy can never get criticized, those are the ones that are made. And whether that's FDA, Justice Department, I don't care what it is, they're all the same. And I've done hearing after hearing at the federal level, and that's the same answer you get. Homeland Security, FBI, NSA, you know, it's the same thing. That's human nature. But the unwinding, and again, what's history say? Every republic that's ever been started has failed. And it's failed for the same reasons. Is power gets concentrated and fiscal sovereignty gets muted, and so what we do is we borrow ourselves to death. And accompanying that is a marked decline in virtue as you take away personal responsibility.
I think the biggest opposition right now is fear. That's what it comes down to. Many different directions, but fear of doing something. And every time I sit down and say, well, just explain to me what that fear is. And in almost every situation, it's based upon, well, somebody said, and they said, and, well, I'm not sure. I said, did you go back to the original sources? Where did you get this information? This thing is going to run amok. Like a convention, runaway convention, that's one of the big oppositions that you have. But here again, the opposition towards going forward is, let's just do nothing. I think the Senator's pretty much clearly stated, if we do nothing, we know what the end result will be.
She in the back's had her head up for.
Absolutely, I'm sorry. You're talking more than you need to ask.